Hey, Brett and Taylor.
Hi, Lisa and Eddie.
How are y'all?
Oh, we're doing great. How about you guys?
We're doing good. Just enjoying the morning.
My real question, Taylor, is mostly for you. How is Brett dealing with the loss from last week of our life group? You know, guys versus ladies. The ladies really took it home and crushed it in code names. Oh, he's walking.
I wouldn't say he's bitter, but
just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were just being generous and letting you guys win because we felt you were really discouraged after week one.
You'll have an opportunity for redemption soon enough.
Talk while you can. Your time on the mountaintop is limited.
No, that's what we do. We talk. We're good at words. That's why I want to put names. Anyway, what have you guys been doing? I see this cute little wall thing behind you that I feel like is new. What have you guys been doing with your time?
yeah, well, I basically went on Pinterest, which was a mistake, and we built a trellis on both sides of our patio. But actually, it's the first time, you see stuff on Pinterest and it looks so easy. And this one actually it wasn't trapped, so that was pretty amazing. Went a little crazy at Home Depot, bought all the plants. Hopefully they'll survive the week. No, it's been good.
Nice.
Yeah, and I feel
you built it yourself?
we did, and I think we should clarify that we are not skilled in this at all. So it actually was the easiest thing ever. But I was telling Taylor and talking to people, we want to become more like Jesus. Dallas Willard talks about that. John talks about that. And Jesus was a carpenter. And so I think this kind of was a spiritual practice. And so when we see you again in person, we're just going to be glowing.
That makes a lot of sense. I think it looks absolutely gorgeous. I think you could say that I'm a little trellis of it.
We made this do list at the start of quarantine that was decidedly less spiritual, and I thought when we made it, like, maybe we'll get to a few of these because we'll be home for a couple weeks, and we've gone through almost all of it, including but not limited to organizing our garage and turn kind of like a secondary living space. You can see some photos there. That was mostly Eddie's work.
We turned that into a living space so that we can exercise and have a new place to chill, kind of expand our space if we're stuck in quarantine. We also expanded to our patio, and we got some new patio furniture. We got a grill. We just had our first night grilling last night, made some delicious kebabs. That's all Lisa. But yeah, just kind of expanding our wings as far as we can while we're still trapped inside.
All right. We look forward to being able to check all that out soon. And Eddie, I did see a 49ers flag on that table. Is that like your temporary stadium in case we can't watch it in the fall?
You know what, Brett? We have to keep hope alive somehow. Yeah. We hold Jimmy in our hearts.
Hope has a name, but it's not Jimmy Garoppolo.
No, it's not. It is Jesus. But there is hope that there will be football again one day.
So we asked people on Instagram this week about their DIY projects, and we had a couple of people submit at Timothy DW. What's up, Tim? Built a backyard fence. All of this carpentry is really impressive to me. That looks great.
Really good.
Real spiritual moments, I'm telling you. Christine Woosley, our special needs director, she's been working on crocheting a blanket. Looks incredible. It's her quarantine blanket to keep her feet warm at home.
Oh, it's almost the size of her couch. That's impressive.
Nice.
She's had a lot of time on her hands. I saw that the Robertson fam built some raised garden beds, which are pictured here. Those look amazing. I feel like it's a little bit of doomsday prepping if you're starting to grow your own vegetables. I attempted this week to start growing some of my own herbs, and I've had basil for about 4 days, and it's already dead. So that does not bode well for our future. I'm very sorry. Hopefully Trader Joe stays open through the apocalypse.
Hey, you could keep practicing, keep growing. We might be in this for a while. Practice makes perfect. I know Vicki Kirkland's also been knitting, doing some stuff, so we got some images of that. I'll brag about Taylor. We have a blank wall in our condo, and so Taylor actually did a giant painting that we get to put on our wall, which went off her skills, along with a little blanket fort that we made just to spice up the office a little bit, give us our own blanket fort workspace.
Yeah, our own little blanket cubicles.
So if you guys have done that, if anybody else has done that, tag Menlo Church in it on Instagram. We'd love to see some blanket forts.
Oh, heck yeah.
I don't know, anything else?
I saw that also Kaylee, her husband, built her a little quarantine desk, which is pictured there. Super cute. Great job.
So much building.
Babe, why didn't you build me a desk? I'm at the
so
kitchen
much
table
building
every day.
I do love
Tell me where we put a desk and I'll build it.
I do love seeing all the different desks and workspaces that people have been putting together to just deal with shelter in place.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us for our pre-service video today. We are looking forward to this weekend service, and so we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad you're with us for this service, and you're going to be so glad that you were. We're looking today at an incredibly important, very sensitive topic. We want to let you know if you have small children, it may be too intense for them. For all families, if you have middle school or high school students, you're going to want to talk about this. We've got tools to help you do that. Let everybody that you know find out about what we're going to be exploring today. I'm so glad you're here to be a part of that. We have other resources also for your children. You can check that stuff out online. We'd love for you to be connected. If you want to reach out, if you want to find out about life groups, how to form relationships, we don't want anybody to feel alone. So you can text the number that we make available. Get in touch with us any way that would be helpful to you, and we would love to be a part of your life. I want to say a word too about next weekend. We're in this series on hope. And next week, we're talking about the big hope. You might have heard about the idea of the end times or the second coming of Jesus. And that's what we're going to take a look at. There's all kinds of wild discussion of this, but really, there is no way for anybody to be grounded in hope without thinking about this hope. There is the way things are. Science can tell you about that. There is the way I want things, or you might want things, personal preference. Lots of stories about that. Jeannie gave you 3 wishes. Christian hope is unique in this. We believe there is a way things are supposed to be. Justice is supposed to roll like mighty streams of water. Optimism is about, I think things are going to work out the way that I want them to be. Hope is grounded in this notion, Christian hope, which changed the world, that there is a way things are supposed to be. And we're not living in that world right now. COVID virus reminds us, physically it's not here. We're worried about the economy. The shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery reminds us one more time that we live in a world of racial injustice, and that vision in the Bible that one day every tribe and tongue and people and nation will be united like a family in love and praise of God and love for one another. That is the hope that we look forward to. Next week, we're going to talk about that. In the meantime, thank you. Thanks for being here. So many of you who are part of our church family, give your financial support on a regular basis enables us to be reaching out in really powerful ways in this season of need all around us. So thanks for doing that. Now, we need to worship God, and God delights in receiving worship from us. So, Tatiana, take it away.
Welcome and thank you for joining us online. Right now, we're going to start our time together responding to God for who He is and what He's done for us. So let's sing of the promises that He's left us. You are with me. What can separate us? You are for me. What can stand against us? Your love, it won't let go. I know it won't. Darkness, shadows have no power over me. Fear promises never fail. Your promises never fail. Your promises never fail. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word. Oh, just to rest upon his promise, just to know thus saith the Lord. Oh, Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I've proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Oh, I'm so glad I learned to trust him. Precious Jesus, Savior friend. Oh, and I know that if he is with me, will be with me to the end. Oh, Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I prove him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Oh, for grace to trust him more. God, we know that it is sweet to trust you, God, because you are faithful to us. Your faithfulness cannot be denied. God, so we fix our eyes on you today. Lord, we say that we trust you. There is a song, I know it well, a melody that's never failed. On mountains high or valleys low, my confidence, my soul will rest in you alone. Hope has a name, his name is Jesus, my Savior's cross has set the sinner free. Hope has a name, his name is Jesus. Oh, Christ be praised, I have victory. There is a light, salvation's flame, Christ undefeated, amen. Trample the grave. See now the cross be lifted high. The light has come, the light is won. Behold the Christ. Hope has a name. His name is Jesus. My Savior's cross I bow my life, I fix my eyes on Christ, my King. I bow my life, I fix my eyes on Christ, my King. Jesus, oh, you reign, oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hope has a name, hope has a name. His name is Jesus, my Savior's cross has set the sinner free. Hope has a name, His name is Jesus. Oh, Christ be praised, I have victory. Hope has a name, His name is Jesus, my Savior's cross has set the sinner free. Hope has a name, His name is Jesus. Oh, Christ be praised, I have victory. Oh, Christ be praised, I have victory. God, we do fix our eyes on you today. Your word says that you are the author and perfecter of our faith. God, for the joy that was set before you, you endured the cross, despising its shame, and you have now sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So God, today, together as a community, we declare our trust in you, in our belief in your unchanging nature, that you do not change in your person, you do not change in your affection toward us, God. And so because of that, Lord, we say today, we trust you. We believe that your promises never fail, that your goodness to us endures. We are grateful to be called your sons and your daughters. It is in your son's name we pray, amen.
We're in the middle of a series on hope, and today we're going to be looking at a source of hope that we haven't covered yet, and that's in who our heroes are. Those people that we admire, people who have courage, amazing achievements, or noble qualities that are like a magnetic draw to us. Right now in the quarantine, people are looking for something to watch on TV at night, and what has mostly captured the nation's imagination right now is the documentary called The Last Dance that covers the championship Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan. And I know for sure in our house, when our kids were growing up, Michael Jordan was at the top of the list for one of my kids as hero. There's certainly a category of famous people that are heroes to us, but they're distant. I think a more profound category of heroes are those people with whom we have proximity, who we live lives closely up against enough to see the cracks in their lives, but also to see the light that shines through. People who embody the characteristics of this hope that we've been looking at over the past few weeks. And today, I'd like to introduce you to one of my heroes. His name is Paul Schoonover. Paul and I met in high school. We shared a love of hunting and fishing. I remember our sophomore year in high school, we drove north of LA outside of a little town called Lake Isabella, and with a friend of ours named Richard Zor, went quail hunting. And right in front of us, a covey of quail flew up the hill, and Paul immediately told Richard and I to get on our bellies, and we did a quasi-army crawl about a third of the way up the hill, at which time Paul stopped us and asked Richard to come over and talk to him. He looked at Richard and he pointed to his gun and he said, "Richard, do you have your safety clicked on your gun?" "No." Richard put the safety on. "And Richard, did you notice Nancy and I are pointing the barrels of our shotguns straight up the hill, and you're at about a 45-degree angle pointing the barrel of your shotgun at Nancy? Could you point it up the hill? And by the way, Richard, you're not coming hunting with us ever again." Paul was like the brother I never had. Both my parents loved Paul. My dad pulled me aside one day and said, "Nancy, Paul is good people," which I knew to my dad was the highest compliment. A down-to-earth quality and an authenticity in someone. After college, Paul met Ellen. And when Ellen and Paul got married, they were in a little apartment just a block away from the apartment I shared with my roommate. And I'd occasionally go over there and have dinner with them. When John and I got married, Paul and Ellen gave us this beautiful porcelain egg that we would fill with Easter candy every year. Even this last Easter was on our table full of goodies. And Paul, when I opened it, wanted me to be sure to know that Ellen picked it out, not him. I could tell by one look that this was Ellen's choice. And then Paul and Ellen moved to Ohio. And Paul and I didn't keep in touch as often, but we had the kind of friendship that every time we picked up the phone and talked, it was like we had never had any time pass at all. And so today, I'd like you to listen to the story of Paul and understand why he is one of my heroes.
Say three things. First off, that my wife makes me tell you all that I have Parkinson's, so that if you see me up here stumbling around, I'm not high or on drunk. And then that always gets a big laugh. And then I say, this is my most important hour of my month. This is the hour I get to spend with you guys. And thirdly, I say, you've not heard this in a long time, but you all are my heroes.
Hi, I'm Paul Schoonover. I'm Matt's dad. Matt was my second son. He was born January 3rd of 1991. He died on May the 11th, 2012. He had really wonderful qualities. He cared very deeply about people. He just had a tremendous sense of humor and just a huge smile, and he gave the best hugs of anybody I've ever known. His real love was baseball. He was very, very good. He played first base. He loved the game because he enjoyed the camaraderie with his teammates. He was known as Big Schoon Dog, or BSD, and whenever you'd ask Matt how he was doing, he would always give the same answer to anybody who asked. I'm just living the dream. And he loved life and all that it had to offer. Matt wasn't perfect by any means, but he was a great son.
My name's Buzz Inboden. I'm the principal at Worthington Christian High School. When Matt was a student here, I was a Christian studies teacher and taught psychology and a few other stray classes. Matt and my son David were great friends all through high school, and I had the privilege of being their class advisor all 4 years of their high school career. I've been here a long time. I went to church here when I was a kid, so I've got a long history with the place. I don't get out much. Paul and I go way back. Ellen and I go back even further. We went to high school together. So we've known each other. We've known each other's families for years and years. My wife would describe Matt as like a great big puppy. He was around our house all the time. So I knew him not only as a student, but also as a friend of my son and sort of part of the family. And of course, they got into their share of orneriness too. Being good wasn't a high priority for either of them necessarily. A kid like Matt, school's torture. They're always wanting to move. That ADD keeps them going in different directions. He did his best, and we did our best to keep him on track.
But in April of 2012, he came to his mom and told her that he needed help. And she said, "What do you need help for?" And he said, "I'm taking heroin." She thought he was kidding. So I came home from work and I asked him, I said, "Hey, bud, what's the matter?" And he said, "Dad, I need to go to rehab. I'm taking heroin, have for a few months now."
It was like being kicked in the gut. And Matt didn't fit the profile of what I thought heroin users were. I thought they were homeless, no teeth, and lived in a van down by the river.
Matt went into Parkside in late April of 2012. It's where he spent the last 19 days of his life. In early May the 2nd, he called me and said he wanted to come home, and he said he could come home. And we talked about it, and he finally said, "I just don't want to be here." I wrote him a letter that told him that he had to finish the program before he could come home, and that to hang tough, that he was on third base headed for home. But he knew that he could beat this addiction. And so he became much more involved in his treatment. On Thursday, May 10th, we got the call from Parkside. Matt was ready to come home. The first thing he wanted to do before he went home was he wanted to go to Chipotle, because he said he'd been dreaming of it for 3 weeks. So we did that, and we came home, and Ellen was there, and we sat and chatted, and it was like we had our old Matt back. He had sparkle in his eye and bounce in his step, and we had our son back. We thought he was fixed. He was going to go on his way to an NA meeting. We talked once or twice on his way to the meeting, and then I told him to call me right after the meeting was over, because we were going to go play golf. He never made it to that meeting. Instead of turning right to go to the meeting, he turned left to go find heroin. And about 9:30, the Columbus police came to tell us that Matt had been found. He had overdosed in his car at a CVS parking lot. So he was less than 24 hours out of rehab when he passed away. It was definitely the lowest point of my life, when they come to tell you that your 21-year-old son, less than 24 hours out of rehab, has passed away from a drug overdose.
My name is Nancy Ortberg, and I am one of Paul's oldest friends. We met when I was 13 years old in high school. Paul has a different memory of the first time he remembers meeting me, but my first memory of Paul was in U.S. history class. And he was wicked smart and hilariously funny. And in that moment, I knew we were going to be friends. I remember on Mother's Day of that year, pulling up to the front of my house in my car and getting ready to get out, and the phone rang, and it was Paul. And had I not had caller ID on the phone, I wouldn't have recognized his voice for the first 30 seconds. There was such grief in it. He told me, "Nancy, we lost Maddie on Friday." And you know, you have those moments when the world just stops. And that's what it felt like in that car.
Our first recollection of knowing you.
So that was when we were 13, right?
We were freshman year in high school at
Yeah.
Whittier Christian. I was riding my bike on Painter Avenue and Whittier Boulevard.
Yes.
I was going to cross the street, and your dad was making a left turn. I rode in front of him, and I saw you with your pigtails, waving with a big smile on your face, waving. I said, "Well, there's Nancy Berg."
Oh, yeah.
And that was our first recollection of me knowing you.
No, and didn't you say my dad almost hit you?
You did almost hit me.
That would not have been a good start to our friendship.
What I remember most about that phone call was I told you that we'd lost Matt. You said, "Let me call you right back." And you called back 5 or 10 minutes later and said, "I'll be there on Tuesday afternoon."
Of course I did.
Which you never said anything what you were going to do when you were going to call me back. But you went to the phone because you knew your friend needed you. I'm forever grateful for that second phone call, because when you and Don came without it being asked, that's what true friendship is about.
Police say heroin isn't just a big city problem anymore, right? That's right. They tell us heroin dealers are now setting up in affluent neighborhoods like Grandview Heights and Upper Arlington, where they say their drugs are not in competition. And the heroin epidemic has hit home for a Grandview Heights man who just buried his son.
The night that the police came to tell us that Matt had passed was a terrible night. We had a long conversation with the officer about what was going on, and we talked about black tar heroin, which I didn't know anything about. And he told us what was going on with black tar heroin in Columbus and around the country. And I said, "What are you doing about it?" He said, "Paul, we're in a battle that we're losing, in a war that we can't win." As a parent who had just lost a child, I didn't want to hear that, because that meant they were giving up. And so I decided that night as he drove away, I said out loud to myself, "My son will not die in vain. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to do something." After Matt passed, he passed on a Friday. His funeral was set for Wednesday the following week. I knew that I was going to be a big part of speaking at that because it was my son. I needed to talk about him. And so I got with Buzz Imboden. He said, "The most important thing is that you get out how Matt passed away." I said that right at the very beginning, that Matt passed away from a heroin overdose because he had struggled with addiction.
There's just nothing like that seat. There's nothing like coming back to school that first day, and the person that always sat there isn't, and they won't ever be there again.
We needed to get the word out so that this didn't happen to other people.
The situation with Maddie, I was surprised about a lot of things. What didn't surprise me was Paul's journey in the middle of the most horrific grief you can imagine, to ask the question, what's the right thing to do here?
He and Ellen both just said, this isn't going to happen for nothing. This isn't going to happen to other parents.
I thought of the verse in Acts chapter 1 talking about taking the gospel to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. So Jerusalem was Columbus to us, our city.
What you're looking at is a new face of heroin addiction.
I had the opportunity to speak to several thousand high school students, spoken at Matt's middle school and his high school 3 times. And then I got to travel the state of Ohio and our Judea with Governor and Mrs. Kasich because they rolled out Ohio's initiative called Start Talking. And we've had the opportunity to be on national television with CBS Sunday Morning. Never forget, it could be your child.
Paul and Ellen Schoonover lost their 21-year-old son, Matt, to an opioid.
And through the book called Dreamland by Sam Quinones, who's had a national reach.
Sam Quinones, who's the author of Dreamland, the true tale of America's opioid epidemic.
This has been an unbelievable nightmare for us as a family.
About 2 years or so after Matt passed away, I became very depressed. It was a very unusual feeling for me, and I didn't know what to do. I was at my doctor for just a regular scheduled doctor's appointment. He said, "Paul, why don't you see a counselor?" I thought only weak people go to counseling. But I was in a state that I was really down, and so I said, "Sure, I'll go see him, at least once." And so he started out with a story that I've never forgotten. He asked me if I knew how to change a tire. He goes, I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Have you ever had to do it?" I said, "Yes, I have, many times." He said, "Well, explain to me how you do it. Go through all the steps." So I went through all the steps of how to change a tire. And he said, "Now, I know you had to change a tire, and your father had taught you how to do it, but who taught you to be ready for your son to die of a heroin overdose?" And I thought about it for a minute. I thought, no one ever told me how to deal with that. He goes, "Exactly. So why do you feel guilty about something you couldn't know anything about or control?" And so from that day forward, the cloud around me started to lift. Several years ago, we had a conversation. Is it okay to be mad at God? And your response was, yes. As long as you don't deny his sovereignty. And that was really helped me a lot, because there are some days when I get mad about it. We don't deserve this. This didn't really happen. And we don't understand why it happened. And I don't ask why anymore, because that would mean that I'm trying to tell God how to run the universe.
You know, Paul's just a great example of not quitting. When I heard he had Parkinson's, and as I watched Parkinson's take a greater and greater toll on him, I was wondering if perhaps he'd just say, okay, that's it. But he never did. He kept his eyes bright. He kept his hope where it should be. As long as he was walking the earth, he had a calling to stand up for those who weren't going to be able to stand up for themselves.
I'm in recovery. I'm almost 6 years clean. I was out using for 12 years. I come from a family that struggles with addiction. Sort of started doing this about 2.5 years ago, and I've walked into this field where I work a program that teaches us all to help one other person. And I've been working with Paul for about 3 years now because I did an internship through here and I met him. His story is the most impactful. I've never seen somebody come in and get a standing ovation every single time and every person line up to shake his hands.
You've not heard this in a long time, and you all are my heroes. Because the battle to fight addiction is so difficult. It's so hard that it takes an enormous amount of strength and courage and character to battle it and not give up.
I'm a recovering heroin addict. I've been using heroin since I was about 17. I'm now 21. The last Thursday I was here, I met a guy in a meeting, and I listened to his story, who comes up to an addict and says, "You're my hero. I'm really glad with what you're doing." I mean, it's not a regular thing, so it really warmed my heart. You know, I mean, there have been multiple times where I easily should have died, but I didn't. And it made me think about, like, what if that was my mom or my dad up there on stage talking about that?
Every day you have to wake up and decide to stay clean. It's easy to think that it will never happen again. You just sort of get lost in this dark place, and you're just using at the end every day just to feel some type of normal because you're sick. And that's what we're dealing with today. I probably go to a funeral every single month.
I have a daughter that uses. As a parent, you can't save your child, so I work here in hopes that since I can't save her, maybe I can help someone to save their own life. Hearing Mr. Schoonover's story is heart-wrenching because dealing with the younger population, once they leave here, they become complacent, stop going to meetings, stop doing any aftercare, and they think that they're invincible. And they usually, use about the same amount that they used before they came here to detox. And once you do that, you're probably not going to make it. In the past year, we've lost 5 clients that came through here. And it's usually within about 2 weeks of them leaving here. Sadly, we lost one within the past month.
I remember one time we had an assembly here, and I had a couple rows of the student body stand up and said, "You are the ones that died this week." And I had a few more rows stand, "And you will die next week." And another row, "And you will die the week after that." And I'm not sure exact numbers, I don't remember, but it was either 4 or 5 weeks and we'd killed off our entire school. It's a huge problem, and it can happen to anyone. And so many people just get ambushed by it. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, "I'm going to be an addict."
Mr. Schoonover, when he comes in, the impact he has on the clients is unlike any other. It's that one time, people don't understand. It only takes one time, and there's no coming back. I definitely have a testimony, and that's why I feel so passionate about working here, is because I want to help other people and know that they can get better. He has dedicated his whole life to saving addicts. I literally have goosebumps because the impact that he has on this community is unlike any other.
Once people pick up a drug or a drink, their brain chemistry is forever changed. And what we do is to help them learn to cope with those changes and what they can expect. Being an alcoholic and an addict myself, I can provide hope. I can also provide empathy. People ask me, why do I do this? And it's because I do help people. I truly believe that I'm here as a help and to provide hope for others.
My story starts with addiction. and it ends with me in my position where I am now. Addiction was never something that I thought would affect me, which took me places that I never thought I would go. Mr. Schoonover impacted me in a way that he probably doesn't realize. And a lot of us see the policymakers, the lawmakers, the people who run treatment centers, the celebrities who endorse substance abuse treatment, and they don't see the Mr. Schoonovers, the individuals who give their personal time to try to help other people who are struggling. And that's what's beautiful about what he does.
It's so easy to make this a simplistic problem, and it's not. And there are things that we can do to help, but judging people for choices is not one of them.
After I speak at Parkside each time, I give away an orange bracelet. You can see I've got it on now. And on the top it says BSD 5/11/2012, which was the date the big Schoon dog passed. And on the bottom it has his life motto, I'm living the dream. I tell them, you will never know Matt, but if you're ever tempted to do it one more time, look at that bracelet and remember, you can't do it one more time. So what I've done is I've brought a bracelet out for anybody who wants one. Just come on down.
The story really moved me, and everybody got a wristband, so we all love the wristbands, and I'm gonna wear it, till the day I die. Because that story really, that's why I'm gonna go out there and not use again. I wanna thank Mr. Schoonover for that, and I pray for him and for me, and I'm gonna do better.
These are some of the pictures that I often will get sent to me on Messenger from previous clients. As you see, this one says, still rocking my lifeline, almost a year.
It's just a little thing, but it's making a difference. When I go out to Parkside, it's a ministry to me of reaching out to these people, but they don't realize how much I've been blessed. I mean, I've never gotten more hugs in my life.
In a very significant way, they are your heroes as well.
Right.
Watching their fight.
Right, and I tell them that because they don't hear it. They hear how bad they are, and how much they've disrupted the family, and how
disappointed.
All these terrible things that they hear. And I want them to be a positive message. As long as you have breath, you have hope.
He's life-changing, and him dedicating his life to this, erasing the stigma behind it. Those stigmas are what keep people out in the streets. Those stigmas are what's keeping people afraid to say that they need help. And just know that your loved one, if they suffer from this, they're still in there. There is hope. I'm proof that there's hope.
You see a kid like Maddie and it surprises you that there's drug abuse. Then you take it to the next level and you see people on the street, and at first glance, the way they look, it doesn't surprise you. But Paul's journey has taught me to look beyond that external first impression and to realize somewhere along the way, life got a hold and addiction took place, but that's a human being, no matter what they look like on the outside, no matter what they struggle with. That's the eyes with which I want to see people.
Early on, after losing Matt, I went to a number of conferences and meetings around that were being held around the city of Columbus. And every time I'd go to a meeting, Marcy Seidel was there, and she would always introduce herself to me.
I'm Marcy Seidel, and I'm Executive Director here at Prevention Action Alliance. I start my day with a run. It was a particularly difficult day because as hard as we were working and as many things as we were doing, the news wasn't getting better. There were more and more people lost to this opiate epidemic. We're trying so hard. What should we do? We worked so hard. Why am I doing this? How do we make a difference?
This woman's very persistent, and I think I probably want to be involved with her as I learn more about the Prevention Action Alliance.
Rarely does one get an opportunity in their life to help change the world, and what a gift that is.
It's safe to say you never expected to be doing this.
No, not in a million years. I went to college to be an interior decorator. Please don't go into my home. Hey, Paul! Paul is one of the most remarkable men I've ever met. A couple years after Matt lost his life to this disease, I met his parents.
How's Ellen?
Ellen's doing well. She sends her best.
and got to talk to them about being an active part of who we are here at Prevention Action Alliance.
So I've served on their board for almost 6 years and watched them grow and tremendously and make an impact across the state.
They are so actively involved, and they give of themselves so freely to anyone who reaches out. They look to take their tragedy and make it into a learning opportunity for prevention for other people. It became clear to me the reason we do what we do is because of the Matthews of the world. We needed to educate, and Matthew B. Schoonover would be why we would do it.
Thus was born the Matthew B. Schoonover Education Center.
You would never trivialize the death of someone you love by saying, well, God wanted to do something really nice through this, because that's just, but yet somehow, sometimes God does bring glory for ashes, and there's been a little bit of glory that shined through.
I never met Matt, but I know Matt. A young person that had hopes and dreams, and then there was this incredible disease that came in and took him away. And that's what we're about here at Prevention Action Alliance, is to make sure that there aren't Matt stories told over and over again. He was my child, he was your child, he was everyone's child.
If I tried to save the whole world, I would have quit in a week, because the people that need our help are your kids and my son and the Matt Schoonovers of the world that don't look like they're going to struggle with addiction. But it's everybody's kid who can struggle. And addiction doesn't discriminate between rich and poor, race, gender, it doesn't matter. Addiction is out there, and we need to keep fighting the battle, working to save one at a time. People ask, what was your goal in all this? Well, it's a pretty simple goal. Save one. The response was generally, well, that's not a very big goal. What are you going to do after you save one? I said, we'll save one more.
Save one. And then what are you going to do? Save one more. Perhaps the way that hope scales is that there is in the seed of one more infinitude, and the ripple effects go out from it. One of the reasons Paul is my hero is that because in the face of great pain, this has been a devastating nightmare for Ellen and I, and against great odds, we are in a battle that we are losing, in a war we cannot win. Paul said, and yet. Two words that tremble with hope. And in those words, Paul found a reciprocity, a return to him from these recovering addicts that he worked with, who then became his heroes. Paul lived out the words that Paul wrote, the Apostle Paul, in 2 Corinthians chapter 1. Here is God, the Father of compassion, the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God. For just as the sufferings of Christ flow over into our lives, so also through Christ, our comfort overflows. But in our pain, in the wounded places of our lives that we'd like to hide, God infuses us with comfort and invites us to be wounded healers. And so I'd like us to think about this as we end. What is our story? We don't have to be involved in the cause that Paul is, but how does our story inform us being comforted by God and then steer us to how we can give back? that spiritual practice of giving out and inconveniencing ourselves for other people, because if the church just shelters in place during shelter in place, we will miss one of the greatest opportunities to be the unstoppable force that God always had in mind for his church here in the Bay Area. So what is it for you? How can you give back out of the way that God has comforted you in your own story? And we have resources online at menlo.church/thewayofhope. We have a journey guide that will take you through a discovery process to help you answer these questions and understand how you can engage more fully in the process of giving back. And then finally, I would say this, besides giving back, another thing that we need to think about deeply is having difficult conversations. I can't imagine a parent watching this that hasn't thought about how and when and if they're ready to have these conversations with their kids, late elementary, early junior high. Our children's ministries will have great resources for you online also. But to open those channels of communication so our kids know they have a place they can talk about this. But not just our kids. The stigma associated with drug addiction that looked so upper middle class in Maddie might be in danger of afflicting us. One of my worries about our church sometimes is our neighbors and people that drive by might think we have it a little more together than we actually do. And what about the spiritual practice of having open, authentic conversations, because we're all addicted to something? We all turn to something rapidly to keep us from having to sit in the pain of this broken world, our own fears, our own anger, disappointment, you name it. We have it. And we use addictive behavior, whether it's busyness or envy or anger or substance abuse or passivity, whatever it is, to do the hard work of meeting God in the most important places of all. And finally, I want to leave you with a phrase from an Old Testament book, Zechariah, chapter 9, verse 12. It's the part of the story where the children of Israel have been in Babylonian captivity for scores of years. And they've gotten the order from Cyrus that they can be allowed to go back, and they're so hopeful. And yet God tells the prophet to tell them that they are still prisoners of hope, because they are going back to a land that they remember in great beauty that has been destroyed. There are still many things in their future that they will hope and long for. That's true for you and me, and for Paul and Ellen. We are all still prisoners of hope.
All these pieces broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended and whole, empty-handed but not forsaken. I've been set free, I've been set free. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saves a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. I can see you now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. You take our failure make beautiful things out of the dust.
I'm so glad that you were here and that you were able to hear about how God uses people like Paul, people like Nancy, to bring something beautiful out of something so heartbreaking. And God will do that for you. God will do that in your life. God will do that with your pain. Now, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust Him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. See you next week.